welcome. Today's video is going to be the second in the series of basic lathe maintenance. I must stress that these are just the techniques that I use. They're not definitive by any means. Everybody has their own methods. These are just mine, and if it gives you some idea to employ your own ideas, then the video has achieved what I set out to do. Before I go to the lathe, I'd like to give a big shout out to a guy called Euan McKinnon. Now, Euan hasn't got a YouTube channel, but he is a very talented wood turner, and his Facebook page is Euan's Wood Turning and Woodworking, and I'll put a link in the description below. And Ian very kindly sent me this piece of Scottish yew. Now, this is going to cause me quite a bit of problem because I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with it. I want to try and maintain as much of this fabulous character as I can. So I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing with that, but in a future video I'll be featuring this piece of yew and we'll see what we come up with. Thanks very much, Ian, I really appreciate it. So that's Euan McKinnon. So we'll go over to the lathe now and start the second part of basic lathe maintenance. So the first thing I like to do is to remove the tailstock and the banjo so that we can get unrestricted access to the bedways. So I removed this location pin at the back here which stops the tailstock coming off the end. So remove the tailstock, put it somewhere safe, and remove the banjo. So the first part of the process is, for me, I use these sanding pads. They're very inexpensive. I don't mix them with anything else. I just use them on the bedways and indeed on my bandsaw, any cast iron surface. So what I do is literally go through the process of going along the length of each bedway. And just clean it off with a bit of paper towel. And you can see there's just a little bit of muck on there, it's not too bad. Then I take some, in this case GT85, which I started using, and give the bedways a good old spray. And then I take some 0000 wire wool, and I just spend a bit of time going over each bedway. Now I do this fairly regularly, especially after I've been turning wet wood, and also especially in the winter months when you get condensation and you could get this very fine sort of surface rust, and this also is a method you can use to remove that. But if you keep a film of something like this GT85 with a PTFE base, with PTFE in it, then when you're not using the lathe, that will coat it and protect the bedways. So again, just a paper towel to wipe off the bedway. And look, there's quite a bit of muck there, and mine are quite clean because I do it quite regularly. Surprise, surprise. Okay, so that's going to get off any crud, or any rust that you may have on your bedways. And don't forget in between as well, give that a clean as well. Okay, so that's the bedways sorted. What we do now is have a look at the underneath of the banjo and also the underneath of the tailstock to make sure they glide smoothly, and then finally we'll just have a look at the headstock and go through what I use or what I do to maintain that in good condition. Okay, so this is the underside of the banjo, and what happens here sometimes, again especially during the time of year when condensation is rife in the workshop, if you haven't got good insulation, like I haven't got any, is the cast base gets a bit rusted up and gets some gunk on it. Again, same method as the bedways. Good old squirt, and on the lever arm here and on the cam. And again, 0000 wire wool just gets that surface nice there. And don't forget the cam, because you do get quite a bit of rubbish collecting on there. And this part here, which is in contact with the underneath of the bedways, spin that round and give that a good old clean as well. Okay, again, clean off with some paper towel, get all the excess off. Notice I'm turning the cam around so that I get all the surfaces. Lift up the locking disc and give it a clean off. And that's done. And I'll just give it a quick squirt of lubricant, and then that's ready to go back onto the lathe. And this is the underside of the tailstock. We covered the quill in the first part, in the first video, which I did last week. So again, take your lubrication of choice and give everything a good old spray. Again, trusty old 0000 wire wool. All you're doing is getting rid of any debris on the contact surface, and especially around this area here, because that goes in between the bedways. And like before, around the securing plate as well. Spin it round so you're getting the underneath part as well. And again, bit of paper towel. Clean off the muck that you've dislodged. And you can see, and I suppose I did this about 3 weeks ago, and if you turn, I mean I don't turn as much as a lot of people, so if the more you turn, the more frequent you need to clean these pieces to keep it all in good working order. So that's all the contact surfaces nicely cleaned. The cam as well. Again, another quick spray of your lubricant of choice, and we're ready to put them back onto the lathe. Okay, the first thing to go back on is your banjo. Slides nice and freely, and then your tailstock. So everything now slides nice and freely. I have heard some turners say they prefer a bit of a coating of rust on their bedways because it locates the banjo more securely. I'm not a professional turner, but I don't subscribe to that view at all. If you lock down your cam properly, it's not going to move. Even if you get a catch, it's not going to move on you, providing it's all seated properly. And the most important thing, in my opinion, is that the contact points between the bedways and the underneath of the banjo are free of any debris, so you've got good, solid contact. So regarding the headstock, one of the most important things is, in my opinion, the spindle, because your chucks go onto your spindle, so you need to keep the threads clean, and also the Morse taper into which you put your drive spur, etc. And another important thing, which is quite often overlooked, is the face here, the shoulder onto which your back of your chuck seats. That has to be clear as well, and clean of any paint, for example, paint spray, any rust or anything, so you get a good seat. And it's also important to keep that lubricated, because then the likelihood of getting your chuck stuck on to your spindle is reduced dramatically. I have never had it happen. Mike Peace did a video on something very similar to this a couple of weeks ago, and Mike has more experience than I have, and like Mike, I'm not a great fan of the washers that you can get to put on here, because they're not machined to the accuracy of these shoulders and your spindles, so it's not going to seat as securely or as plumb, if you like, as it would when you've got the back of your chuck, which is a machined piece of steel, to this machined piece of steel, the shoulder on here. So again, mine are not that dirty because I do clean them on a very regular basis. Again, just put some the lubricant of your choice, and then I use the old bronze brush. I mean, you could use any sort of soft bristled metal brush, bronze or whatever you like, to clean the spindle and especially the face. And that gets rid of any debris that's on there, and then clean off the excess on the spindle. Just run the paper towel, look, and it wasn't long ago that I did this, so you know, it's there you go. So that's got that nice and clean. Again, you can use a bronze, Mike Peace suggested, and a very good idea too, is the bronze brushes that you use to do shotgun barrels, etc. That's fine. But for 5 years, I've used my old bottle brush. This is about the third one. Literally just up and down your Morse taper, and from the back to cover the full length of it. And then if you have got an airline, you can blow that out with an airline, and that just keeps. I don't put any lubricant inside there. I've never felt it necessary, so I just don't do it. And then again, just a quick squirt on the outside, and that's the spindle done, and it keeps it all nice and clean. The other important thing to check on a fairly regular basis is your drive belt. Now on this machine, it's a grooved drive belt, and it runs excuse me, on two different pulleys, on two different pulley configurations. What I tend to do with this is literally just put the air line in there with my extraction here, and just blow that out. Not much more I can do with regards to the inside, and just keep the pulleys as clean as you can. Now if you have a Reeves Drive, which there's a picture there, on a regular basis check the integrity of the belt, because of the method that the Reeves Drive employs, it can fray the belt over time. And the belts, when I had the AWVS 1000, which is a generic type of lathe, the belt was about £3 sterling. So it's not a big deal and very easy to change. Much easier than on these machines where you've actually got to remove the spindle to change the belt. But I always check to make sure that it's in good condition. And the last important point is that with this machine, the motor is facing backwards so that the intake for the fan is away from the lathe. A lot of lathes have the motor mounted this way so that the fan is sucking air, dust, crud, rubbish directly into the motor from your turning and your sanding, whatever your extraction system doesn't pick up. So always check that the grill is free from any debris, that it's got a good airflow, and also occasionally take off the cover and give it a clean out inside, because it will take in quite a bit of rubbish from your turnings on a regular basis. Well, I hope some of you found that of some use. As I said in the beginning, it is just they're my methods of how I keep my lathe clean, and it's worked very well for me for over 5 years. Everybody will have their own techniques, preferred products, etc. But it's just to give some of you an idea of how to maintain your lathe in good working order. Well, thanks very much indeed for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you very soon. Cheers now.